My name is Marcelo Tibau. I'm here to present my doctoral dissertation, which is named Quantifying Knowledge Gain in Online Searches, the DKG metric. Well, I would like to start by uh, thanking the doctoral committee members for being here. It is an honor to have you all assessing this study. I would like to also thank my advisors, Professors Siqueira and Nunes, for their unwavering support. And also, last but not least, acknowledge the presence of some friends. Your support is very important. Thank you. Without further ado, let's get this started. First, DKG stands for Degree of Knowledge Gain. And in this study, the term search, web search, and online information searching, I use it interchangeably. This is the presentation overview. I intend to start with a quick introduction, then jump to the literature review, show the steps, the formalization steps, and what I did on those steps, talk a little bit about the methodology, the results and discussion, and the conclusion. Introduction. Before we go further, some important definitions. Those are concept definitions that are important to my work. The first definition concerns knowledge acquisition, which stands for the conscious intellectual activities applied during a learning process, such as learning as a searching process that facilitates learning through critical engagement and interaction with information. Uh, Engagement and interaction are pivotal in this study. Knowledge again. This is a research topic that attempts to discover if learning occurred during a search session and at what point. It is about measurement. Transfer of learning. Those are theories used to assess the learning process. It can occur within similar situation, and in this case, it is called near transfer, or across different situations. It is far transfer. In this study, I focus on near transfer. And finally, preparation for future learning, PFL. It is a transfer learning approach. Use it to apply to equip learners with the skills to navigate and utilize knowledge-rich environments. And in this study, the web is considered a knowledge-rich environment. Well, I can see that the platform prevents some animation. So what I would like to show here is this dual knowledge gain perspective, because knowledge again could represent different things based on the entity that we are working with. From a searcher perspective, knowledge again represents the cognitive effort applied during the search, and through this effort, there is an emergence of knowledge. Uh, from the search engine perspective, knowledge again represents the machine's understanding of the information need and its ability to retrieve useful information. But to capture the nuances of learning, we had to consider the interaction. by considering the intersection of the two perspectives, and this is what I'm interested in. But to capture the nuances of learning through this interaction, it is necessary for us to understand how learning occurs during a search, or how search facilitates the learning process from one perspective. And from the other perspective, we need to understand how the information retrieval model can be adapted in its mathematical dimension and also in its properties. But why is measuring knowledge gain important in a web search context? Because to enhance the way people access, process, and utilize information online, understanding how knowledge is gained and how to measure this gain is necessary. I would add that it is pivotal, very important in a such as learning context. Back to the dual perspective, knowledge gain is used at work by using user behavior metrics to represent search behavior. Metrics like those here as examples. But in my opinion, user behavior metrics, first of all, there's nothing wrong to use that. But I think it's not enough when you're considering that there is a cognitive aspect to it. So I ask, what is missing? Well, to me, it's the interaction missing, and it's missing the search behavior itself from this interaction, because you cannot assess qualitatively the user behavior without relating it to some search strategies, because search strategies represents the cognitive effort that the searcher is applying during the search, and also the information added is missing. They those metrics, those user behavior metrics, do not account for that. So this study aims to address this gap by developing the metric I'm calling the DKG metric. And it aims to explore the subject with four research questions. The first one concerning the strategies employed by the users and if those strategies could indicate transfer of learning. The second research question concerning the near transfer accuracy during a search session. A third research question concerning uh, the possibility to use an automated metric for measuring knowledge gain to assess transfer of learning. And a fourth research question concerning the comparison between a knowledge gain metric and a traditional transfer of learning measurement procedure. Literature review. How knowledge gain has commonly been assessed? Well, it depends on the assessed entity. When the searcher is the entity, uh, usually it is used some transfer of learning measurement procedure. Whether it is a pre and post test, open-ended assessment methods, or self-reported perceptions of learning. Concerning pre and post tests, we have here on the yellow side the topics concerning those reviewed studies. And here the significant findings from those topics on the effectiveness of such strategies, on the effectiveness of learning tools and environments, but some gaps still remain. Gaps on quantifying knowledge for complex tasks and optimizing search interfaces. Regarding open-ended exercise, significant findings on the factors impacting learning. For example, text complexity, search behavior, and metacognitive strategies. Yet gaps remains on quantifying knowledge in open-ended tasks, and also the effects of digital tools on learning depth and retention. Concerning self-reported perceptions of learning, significant findings on knowledge gain relating to such behavior and the impact of scaffolding on this gain. Again, gaps remains on quantifying knowledge gain and the effects of digital tools on learning depth. Well, the DKG metric could aid to fill those gaps because it is based on the cognitive effort derived from the search strategies, also by understanding the information addition process of it. When the search engine is the assessment entity, there is usually used assumed evidence of learning. Assumed evidence is the use of user behavior metrics as evidence, like the use of, for example, complex terms during qualitative formulation and formulation might indicate learning. Just as an example. Well, findings concerning those studies on comprehending knowledge acquisition and also on how to predict knowledge gain, but still gaps remains on integrating cognitive aspects, and it's where a DKG metric could aid. Formalization, in this part, I'm intending to show what was involved in this formalization through the steps that I dealt with. The first step concerned to bring a qualitative approach to quantitative measurement, and it is brought by this formalization here. We have I representing the information, and those little guys here often that I'm calling it sentences to simplified matters, but you could consider them queries or you could consider them document scenes. This big guy here, the capital gamma, represents the set of the sentences. And basically what I'm saying here is that you could only qualitative assess a current sentence by first considering what the previous sentence already brought to the set. Without doing that, there is no sense in qualitative assess different sentences. Formalization of information added definition. What I'm saying here is that a current sentence must be different from a previous one, and also it might be greater than the previous ones in the sense that it is adding different information. But when information added could be seen as knowledge gain, well, here this is a conditional probability uh, involving the current and the previous sentences. And if you apply this, if you apply a logic process on it, you might end up with this result here showing that the current the current sentence must be a consequence of the, the previous one. And when this happens, you can consider this information added knowledge gain. Well, to calculate the knowledge gain, I used implicit measures of knowledge, specifically part and click. I will explain a little about it further. The difference in information added from pair queries was formalized by this sentence here, 1 minus PI stands for the detection probability. So 1 minus the detection probability is the difference information added from a pair of queries. The pair of queries detection probability. And to calculate the relative entropy, and this is important to say that relative entropy here represents the search entropy. The first thing I equaled the detection probability to a type of detection probability that consider not only the rank position but also the distance in the rank, because studies shows that there is a decreased tendency in terms of probability when you go down rank, unless that you click in some previous document earlier. If you do that, you have to rescale those probabilities because it increases the probability to see documents in the lower ranking position. MI represents a observation coefficient, and observation coefficient is based on the implicit measure. Click, if there were a click or not, one or zero, and a query similarity coefficient. I apply it here, the Jacquard similarity coefficient, but it could be used at another one. It was a personal decision. But it is important to explain here that the click do not represent only clicking on a document. There is some qualitative understanding of that. A click represents all the visual attractiveness of a document. It also represents the searcher decision making regarding the document's usefulness. Represents their information need. So there is a qualitative rating on it. Also, query do not represent changing terms during a search, but also a specific decision made by the searcher on how to interact with the search engine. In those steps, I try to work the information added. If you recall a few slides back when I said that two topics were missing from the interaction, here I work at the information addition. In here, I do final steps. I try to work the search behavior uh, and put it on the, the calculation. But how is the degree of knowledge again calculated? This is the formula. Here, 1 minus the text probability. We already saw that it represents the difference in information added from a query of a pair of queries. But it is here because it aids to align the degree of belief. The degree of belief is the set of the searcher's belief that they bring to the search with information rescaling. Information rescaling is when the searcher adds the new information that rescales what they already know about the topic. The I was already saw that is the detection probability. It represents a qualitative additive measure of information because it not only conserves ranking position but also the user decision. This is the relative entropy. It is here to represent the search entropy, and it is based on Shannon's entropy. And finally, a 0.01 scaling factor to simplify the metric interpretation facilitates comparison with other metrics. Concerning the methodology, data collection, the data were collected through two experiments. The design of the experiments were similar, except for a pre-search and post-search steps in the second experiment, in which the participant had to answer a multiple choice test, the pre and post test. But during the search, the design was similar. Participants had to share the screen and apply the think aloud protocol. The observation method was applied was the think aloud protocol to aid the participants to articulate their thoughts, but also interviews after the experiments in which they were able to discuss search practices. Data analysis, the analysis method concerned a coding process using a online information search strategy framework with 35 indicators, but also a credit taxonomy that I developed during my master's research with 8 different query states. The comparative method used was the concept comparative method, in which I analyzed the participants within. So I analyzed what the participant did, but also analyzed it comparing to the set of participants. Apply a data saturation process on both experiments. The first experiment, the saturation data was reached with 26 participants. The second experiment was reached with 12 participants. Also apply intercoder reliability to assess the coding process, or the process here. And it was conducted by the first experiment by 2 independent coders, and in the second by 3 independent coders. They reassessed the coding process, and I had these readings using the Krippendorf's alpha method, and we had a very good reliability on both experiments. Results and discussion. I tend to go through it by answering the research questions. The first research question concerning the strategies employed by the users and if those strategies could indicate transfer of learning. Here are published papers in which I work this answer. Well, we analyzed all the search strategies indicators by using four knowledge gain concepts: the knowledge gain of cognitive absorption, comprehension, elaboration, and memory. We use those concepts as constructs, and I had two independent coders assessing all the indicators and to verify if they agree if they could relate to those knowledge gain concepts. And the results, we had 16 indicators relate to at least one of those knowledge gain concepts. The second research question concerned new transfer currency during the research session. Again, here are the studies in which I discussed this research question. Well, six from those 16 had presence of at least two knowledge gain concepts. The indicators here. I would call attention to this SMI7 indicator because it represents addition of information. Because it serves to track when the searcher was somehow saving the content, whether it's copy and paste or printing or fabricating the content. The third research question concerning if an automated metric for measuring knowledge could be used to assess transfer of learning. This part of the studies are ready to be submitted, but I answer affirmatively to this question, and I will show why. To do that, I would like to return to the formula. Here we have the entropy, and entropy represents the lack of information, meaning that a reduction in entropy indicates, again, uncertainty concerning the addition of information. One minus the detection probability, the difference in information added from pair queries. Here we have the conditional probability in which the current statement, the current sentence must be a consequence of the previous one that contemplates scenarios where one sentence contributes new information to a set of existing sentences, represented by the qualitative approach. One minus entropy represents measure of additive information. The summation of the detection probability represents considers the probability distribution that occurred during the search session. And finally, the observation probability underscore the decision-making process significance because of the qualitative approach used on both the click and query. Concerning the fourth research question regarding the comparability of a knowledge gain metric to a traditional transfer of learning measurement. I answer positively here, although I don't yet submit it any to any place. I run some statistical analysis here. Experiment correlation between the two metrics show a strong positive relationship and a very low p-value, meaning that these do not occur by chance. I also apply a Tese variance. I divided the data based on the three tasks and compared the metrics on each of the three tasks and establish a connection between the two metrics. And also the man with the U test that was applied to check if one metric was relatable to the other one, and it showed broader relationship. Well, to conclude the matters, I would like to recap what was done, the work of this research. First, I had to define some concepts within the search context. Concepts like the transfer of learning, information addition, knowledge gain. Then I formalized all of this theoretical framework and devised a calculation methodology. After that, I apply it on two experiments to assess this calculation methodology, and those experiments aided me to answer the four research questions, which acted as a proof of relevance of the calculation methodology. Limitations and mitigations actions. This is a qualitative research saying that there is some limitations imposed by the nature of the research. It is intensive and time consuming. Also, it has a subjective approach. To mitigate that, I apply a methodical data saturation comparative analysis process. Also, to define the sample size on both experiments, use a post hoc approach to balance sample size with redundancy, which could add to the intensive and time consuming nature. So it was done to ensure that I had the insights without excessive repetitiveness. The experiments had different focus. The first one concerning analyzing query types and online search strategies. The second one, I was interested in the correlation, comparing the correlation between the two metrics. To mitigate that, I utilized diverse methods to enrich findings, including comparative methods. Applicability of the findings, it might be context specific due to the participant demographics composed by graduation students in one experiment. The second experiment concerned law professionals, law students. So those demographics might limit the generalizability of the research. So I acknowledge this specific demographics to contextualize the results. And Finally, future work attempt to broaden participant diversity to include novices and also to categorize the DKG metric into low, middle, and high groups in order to understand better the metric's behavior. Also, future work on impact of metacognitive studies are in order. Rather, it is to examine this type of domain on decision making, rather is using to map search as learning tasks. The DKG metric also might be incorporated in educational frameworks. And in my opinion, it open up some research avenues concerning such as learning applications, the development of educational search engines, and also regarding classification content and recommendation sequencing. Well, thank you very much.